Hello, and welcome to the weekly Education Pulse, your fast track to the ideas, stories, and shifts that matter in international education.
Every week, we break down the big headlines, unpack trends shaping the future of schools, and spotlight a fresh article or idea worth talking about, all in about 10 minutes, give or take a tangent or two.
So, we're not here to bore you with buzzwords, we're here to make sense of what's going on, the good, the messy, and just the plain weird in a sector that matters more than ever.
I'm Tony, a lover of strategy, data, and ribeye steaks.
And I'm Sammy, professional listener and caffeine enthusiast. Let's get into it. All right, let's dive into this week's international education headlines. And it's quite the mix. We've got £1 billion bet on a new school in Cairo, heartbreak in Ho Chi Minh, and a brand new international school opening near the beach in Portugal. All three stories tell us something about the state of the global market right now.
Thanks, Sammy. Let's start in Portugal where over the last 5 years, it has quietly become one of the most interesting destinations for international families. A new school, Beyond International School, is opening in Oeiras in September and is going to offer bilingual Portuguese-English education with the Cambridge curriculum.
And let's be honest, it sounds dreamy. Beach, sunshine, Cambridge curriculum. It's what I imagine a school might look like if you designed it from a luxury travel catalogue.
Great is that they've targeted both locals and expats, offering that bilingual learning curriculum that's obviously globally portable. And that seems to be the sweet spot right now. Schools that understand hybrid identity, kids growing up Portuguese, but also heading for that global future.
And also worth noting, this isn't just about curriculum, it's about lifestyle migration. We've seen families from the UK, France, Germany, even South Africa moving into Portugal for a better pace of life. And the schools are following that flow.
Exactly. And when you think about all the tax perks and the golden visa schemes that played a certain role in that attracting families, it's no surprise that demand for schools like this are rising.
And it's a good reminder that the international schools market isn't just growing where the economy's booming. Sometimes it just grows where the surf's good. Now, from the beaches of Portugal to the high rises of Cairo, GSM and Uptown 6 of October have announced a joint project, a premium international school, backed by an eye-watering 1.3 billion Egyptian pounds investment. That's roughly around 22 million British pounds sterling.
This is huge, not just for the school itself, but for Egypt's education landscape. Cairo has become a serious magnet for international school development, particularly in the new satellite cities like 6th of October and New Cairo.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is that they're talking about building a sustainable and edutaining environment, which, yeah, that does sound like a buzzword sandwich, but it points to a wider shift. Schools aren't just educational spaces anymore, they're experiential, they're branded.
And this branding plays really well with the affluent Egyptian families who want more than just academics. They're looking for status, networking, bilingualism, and a touchpad to global universities.
And what I'd love to know is how much of that 1.3 billion is actually going to teacher recruitment and training, because the buildings and the gardens can be gold plated, but without good teachers, you're just running pretty much a luxury daycare.
Yeah, that's the tension, isn't it? These premium schools are rising fast, but what's the plan for teacher supply, especially in Egypt, where competition for quality international educators is really heating up? Stop. It's a hard one. In Ho Chi Minh, the English language international school has abruptly closed its doors after collecting over 250,000 US dollars in tuition fees. Parents were completely blindsided. Doors were locked, teachers weren't paid, and families are understandably furious.
Yeah, I mean, stories like this just hit a nerve, don't they? Because at the heart of international education is trust. And once that's broken, especially in markets like Vietnam, where regulation is maturing, the damage goes beyond just one school.
That's right. And this isn't an isolated incident. See, Vietnam, there have been a number of cases, but we've also seen versions of this in Cambodia and sub-Saharan Africa, where the demand for English medium education, outpaces oversight and governance. The other angle here is obviously reputational. The schools that are legitimate, they're really doing their things well, have to work so much harder to reassure parents that they are financially sound, that the teachers are going to be paid, and that they will be open next term.
Yeah, and here's a sobering bit. A parent interviewed in that news story said they spent their entire annual salary just to secure a place for their child. So that's not just a school closing, that's a family's future imploding.
Yeah. This is where the international education sector needs stronger accountability because when things go wrong, it's not just a business failure, it is a human one, and real lives are impacted.
And on that sobering note, that's three stories. One school just starting, one receiving £1 billion boost, and one collapsing overnight. The through line, demand is strong, but trust, investment, and delivery don't always move at the same speed.
Well said. And now we move from closures and construction to something that could cause an earthquake in the UK independent school scene.
All right. So from international headlines to homegrown storm, we're talking VAT on UK independent schools. And if you think that sounds like a dry policy issue, well, think again. This has the potential to radically reshape the UK educational landscape and beyond.
Yeah, I wrote an article on this recently, which really gets into these some of these factors that are happening, and we'll link that below. But the headline is this: from January 2025, the UK government imposed VAT on private school fees. The goal: raise some money, level the playing field, and theoretically fund 6,500 new teachers in the state sector. But the fallout has been significant.
Yeah, just in 5 months. And so far, around 20 independent schools have confirmed they are closing, and many others that are merging just to survive. Now, VAT wasn't the sole cause, but it was clearly the straw on the camel's back, especially for smaller schools, the kind that serve middle income families outside of the big cities.
And that's the irony. This was meant to drive equity, but it might just do the opposite. If only families who can afford the private schools are the ultra wealthy, what happens to the bursaries, the social mobility, and to the families who were, they were just trying to give their kids extra opportunity?
Yeah, it's like trying to fix a crack on a wall with a sledgehammer. You hit the structure hard, but you haven't addressed the foundation. Meanwhile, state schools are expected to absorb the overflow with no increase in funding or space.
Yeah, that's right. And there's obviously this global piece as well. UK boarding schools have long been a magnet for international families, but if the costs rise sharply, those families are going to start looking elsewhere, whether that's Canada, Europe, Southeast Asia, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. The UK has traded for decades on the prestige of its independent school brands, but prestige can't outrun the price. There's a limit to what families, even wealthy ones, will pay, especially when other options are emerging.
And here's the twist, this VAT move could actually accelerate foreign ownership of UK schools. I think as it stands, there are around 27 British independent schools owned by Chinese education groups. And just recently, Plymouth College and Malvern St. James joined Chinese-owned Galaxy Global Education Group.
Yeah, and that raises huge questions about autonomy, curriculum influence, and cultural alignment. Are these schools being saved, bought out, or even both?
We've also heard of schools that are looking at converting to academy status, essentially joining the state system to avoid the VAT. Now, that's a tectonic shift in what it means to be an independent school.
Yeah, I think that the big takeaway here is that education policy never really exists in a vacuum. It's financial, it's political, and it's deeply emotional. You mess with the model, you don't just move money around, you're altering people's futures.
Yeah, well said. I mean, if you're looking for a bit more information on that story, give that article a read.
And with that, it's an end to this week's episode of the Weekly Education Pulse. So if you stuck around with us this far, thank you very much. We've gone from £1 billion school builds to sudden closures and somehow end up talking about VAT and Chinese investors. That's international education for you.
And before we sign off, a quick shout out to something we're both really looking forward to, the ISC Research Annual Conference, happening this year on the 15th and 16th of July.
Yeah, it's 2 days packed with insights, real world case studies, and best of all, actual humans sharing what's working and what's not in international schools right now. So if you're in school leadership, a supplier, or just curious about what's coming next in the sector, it's not one to miss.
We're there, and we'd love to see some of you there in the sessions or in the chat.
You can register now via the IC Research website. We'll drop a link in the comments below.
All right, hit the subscribe or follow if you want more of these weekly updates, and let us know what topics you would like us to unpack next.
And we'll see you next week, same time, same place, same obsession with international education.